All right, let's dive right in. We're going to be talking about something called the pulse economy. This totally invisible, ultra-fast world of data where fortunes are made and lost in billionths of a second. It's really the digital heartbeat of all modern finance and tech. We're going to break down who runs the show and, more importantly, how a new player could ever hope to compete.
And that really is the question, isn't it? When your competition is moving at speeds that make the blink of an eye feel like an eternity, how do you even get your foot in the door? The barrier to entry isn't just about having deep pockets. It's literally about physics. It's about being able to process information right at the absolute edge of what's possible.
So, to really get this world, you've got to understand its most basic building block, the pulse. You can think of it as the single elemental beat of information. In the world of finance, that's a stock price changing. In AI, it's a tiny packet of data zipping between processors. It's the core signal, and believe me, mastering it is everything. Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to look at the three types of companies that dominate this space. First, the architects, the ones who build the tech. Then, the gatekeepers, who manage all the data traffic. And finally, the executioners, who actually profit from it all. And then, we'll get to the fun part, a real strategy for how an underdog could actually find a way to win. First up, let's talk about the architects. Now, these are the companies working at the most fundamental level you can imagine. They don't just use the pulse. They're the ones who make the pulse possible in the first place. And this quote right here, it really gets to the heart of what they do. See, in the real world, information travels as these smooth, continuous analog waves. The architects build the incredibly specialized silicon that can translate those waves into discrete digital ones and zeros, the pulse, and they do it at just unbelievable speeds. They are, for all intents and purposes, creating the very language this economy speaks. And if you look at this table, you can see how these giants all play different roles. You've got Broadcom, with its PAM4 signaling tech that basically crams twice the information into every single pulse. Then you have NVIDIA, whose InfiniBand tech is the absolute gold standard for connecting AI chips. And then you have companies like AMD and Intel, making these things called FPGAs, which you can think of as blank slate chips that a trading firm can program with its own secret sauce for handling the pulse. So the architects create the pulse. But once it's out there, it has to be managed, right? And that brings us to our second group of competitors, the gatekeepers. Their job is to control the flow. Now, the biggest challenge they face is something called a microburst. The best way to picture it is to imagine the entire internet trying to squeeze itself through a tiny garden hose for just a fraction of a second. That's a microburst. It's this sudden, totally overwhelming flood of data that can bring an entire network and a trading firm crashing down if it's not handled with absolute precision. And you can see they all have different ways of tackling this. Arista Networks is known for tech that handles microbursts on trading floors in real time. Cisco, the big one, uses these massive buffer memories to kind of soak up the shocks. Then you've got a company like Pico. Their devices are like stethoscopes for the data center, listening for something called jitter, these tiny, tiny delays that could end up costing millions. And all of this, by the way, is happening inside data centers run by Equinix, which is the physical place where the entire pulse economy comes to meet. Okay, let's move on to our final group and see how this all comes together. We've created the pulse, we've managed its flow. Now let's meet the companies that turn that pulse directly into cash, the executioners. For these firms, especially the ones in finance, the business model is both incredibly simple and ridiculously complex. Every single time a stock's price ticks up or down, that's a pulse. And their entire goal is to receive that pulse, understand it, and act on it faster than anyone else on the entire planet. That's it. And the speeds we're talking about here are just staggering. You have Citadel Securities and Jane Street. They're the undisputed kings of the pulse, building custom hardware just to shave off a few nanoseconds. Then there's this company, Exigy. Their tick-to-trade boxes can handle an entire trade from seeing the signal to placing the order in under 400 nanoseconds. Now, to put that in perspective, a blink of an eye is about 400 million nanoseconds. And if that's not fast enough for you, Innova Financial Networks uses microwave and laser networks because signals actually travel faster through the air than through fiber optic glass. They are literally racing at the speed of light. Okay, so let's just take a breath. We've seen the landscape. The architects have multi-billion-dollar R&D budgets. The gatekeepers own the infrastructure. The executioners are operating at the literal limits of physics. Which brings us right back to that big question. If you're a new company, you can't build a faster chip than Broadcom or a faster network than Innova. So how on earth do you win? And this brings us to the most important part, strategy. See, if you can't win with brute force, if you can't win with raw speed, you have to change the game. You've got to find a way to hack the pulse. And the answer is actually pretty simple. You stop competing on their terms. The competitive edge isn't in the speed of the pulse anymore. The giants have totally cornered that market. The new edge is in pulse intelligence. It's all about what you do with the signal, how you interpret it, what you can predict from it, and what hidden information it contains. This playbook here lays out 3 really concrete ways to do that. First, you find a niche. Don't even try to process stock market data. Instead, focus on a brand new type of pulse, like maybe the emerging 6G satellite signals. Second, be smarter with cheaper hardware. Use standard white box switches, but run your own superior AI on top to manage those microbursts better than the expensive pre-programmed systems. And third, and this one is my favorite, find the hidden signal. While all the big firms are watching the public stock market pulse, you could be analyzing alternative data, like pulses of satellite imagery showing cars in a Walmart parking lot to predict their earnings before anyone else. So here it is. This is the strategic pivot put as simply as possible. The incumbents are totally locked in a race for the speed of the pulse. Your focus as the underdog has to be on the density and the predictive value of the pulse. You're not trying to be faster. You're trying to be smarter and see the things they miss. And there you have it. That's the sentence you put in your business plan. That is the key takeaway from this whole thing. It perfectly summarizes that shift from a war of speed to a war of intelligence, using programmable hardware, like those FPGAs we talked about earlier, to find and exploit the valuable signals that the giants, in their mad dash for pure speed, might just be flying right past. So that leaves us with one final thought. Yes, the pulse economy is dominated by these absolute giants, but it's also constantly creating new signals, new data, and new opportunities. The next huge advantage won't come from being a nanosecond faster. It'll come from being the first to understand a signal that no one else is even listening to.